Hello and welcome back. So in this lecture, we are exploring lecture 17, the neurochemistry behind things like runner's high, endogenous opioids and endocannabinoids, and then shifting to things like the physiology and ethics of ergogenic aids. Again, if you are in my anatomy class, this is going to be much more relevant and applicable to you as well. As you can see here, it's going to be things like questions on why does endurance exercise sometimes have that euphoria feel, substances like caffeine, creatine, anabolic steroids, human growth hormone regarding performance effects. Again, using Bloom's taxonomy. Interestingly, most of these questions really fall into that level 2 understand category. It's just the nature of these questions. It doesn't mean they are easy per se, just that a lot of this content is more remembering and understanding as opposed to analyzing or evaluating. So let's get started. Question 1. Enkephalins and endorphins are best described as what? Exogenous opioids, synthetic analgesics, endogenous opioid peptides, cannabinoid agonists, or hormonal supplements. And this one is a straight up memorization answer. So enkephalins and endorphins are those endogenous opioid peptides produced by the CNS. They bind opioid receptors, reduce pain signaling, which contributes to that nice exercise-induced analgesia that is oh so good. Question 2. Naloxone is clinically used to what? Enhance endurance, treat anxiety, stimulate CB1 receptors, reverse opioid overdose, or increase endorphin release. Hopefully this one's straightforward to you. Tried to set up that question. Naloxone, it competitively binds opioid receptors without activating them, which then reverses the effect of opioids, such as dangerous things like respiratory depression. It's often used in the emergency room for treatment of opioid overdose. Question 3. Endocannabinoids, such as anandamide, primarily act on opioid receptors, dopamine receptors, CB1 receptors, GABA receptors, or NMDA receptors. This one is your CB1. So anandamide binds primarily to CB1 receptors in the brain, and when those receptors get activated, it influences things like mood and reward signaling, pain modulation, again during that prolonged exercise, trying to keep you going. Question 4. Why are endocannabinoids thought to contribute to endurance exercise? Is it that they increase VO2 max, they enhance pain tolerance and reward, they stimulate erythropoiesis, that would be nice, they increase muscle strength, or they reduce oxygen cost? And endocannabinoids enhance both the pain tolerance and the reward pathway. The evidence that's out there suggests that even when, this is interesting, opioid receptors are blocked, elements of runner's high still persist, which implicates the cannabinoid system. Very fascinating stuff. Question 5. An ergogenic aid is best defined as something that what? Is legal in all sports, improves health, enhances athletic performance, is sold over the counter, or is hormonally active. Now the first 4 all sound like they might be possibly the right answer, but this one is really purely an athletic performance enhancer. That's what an ergogenic aid is. Any substance or strategy, by the way, that improves athletic performance. It doesn't have to be legal, doesn't have to be over the counter, doesn't have to be necessarily health promoting. The defining feature, the definition is just that, performance enhancement. So music can be an ergogenic aid potentially. Question 6. A randomized, double-blind, crossover study is valuable because it what? Eliminates placebo effects, allows subjects to serve as controls, uses a large enough sample size to achieve power, allows each subject to serve as their own control, or requires animal models. This one you might need to think about for a moment. This one is D. So yes, randomization and blinding further limit things like bias and placebo effects. And yeah, there is a control arm, so questions A and B might be an option. But in the crossover design, each participant receives both the intervention and then the placebo at different time points, which then reduce the variability of subjects and really strengthens the impact of the results. It's really hard to do this. Rarely do we see studies that have the crossover arm, but they're great when they do. Question 7, anabolic steroids most directly enhance performance by what? Increasing aerobic metabolism, increasing neural drive, promoting protein synthesis and muscle hypertrophy, increasing mitochondrial density, or inhibiting catabolism. Two of those might seem correct, but this one is C. Yes, anabolic steroids do more indirectly inhibit catabolism, but its major effects are increasing transcription of the MPS pathways, your muscle protein synthesis pathways, which thereby lead to hypertrophy and improved strength. They are an ergogenic aid, and their ergogenic effect is therefore the structural adaptation of muscle. And they are also very dangerous with serious potential and irreversible side effects. So please don't go there. Question 8. Why can detecting human growth hormone abuse be somewhat difficult? Is it that HGH is quickly degraded? Is it endogenous and exogenous HGH are structurally similar? Is it that HGH is inactive orally? Is it that HGH does not affect performance? Or is it that HGH is fat soluble? And this one is, well, unfortunately, exogenous human growth hormone is structurally similar, actually practically identical to endogenous hormone, making differentiation very difficult. And its short half-life, which is really about 15 to 20 minutes at a time in a quick pulsatile natural secretion in the body, really complicates detection, but it is getting better. FYI, the two main approaches, one is the isoform method, which detects imbalances in the HGH molecular isoforms, and the other one, the biomarker method, really identifies what happens to elevated levels of human growth hormone dependent proteins like IGF-1 and collagen 3 downstream. Question 9, creatine supplementation is most effective for improving what? Long duration endurance, submaximal aerobic efficiency, repeated high intensity efforts, flexibility, or reaction time. And this one is, of course, repeated high intensity short duration efforts. Creatine increases your intramuscular phosphocreatine stores, which really enhances quick repletion or ATP resynthesis during those short high intensity activities. So therefore, it is most effective in those repeated sprint or power-based efforts like weightlifting rather than endurance. And the last question is possibly my favorite of this set. Caffeine exerts its ergogenic effects primarily by what? Increasing insulin sensitivity, blocking adenosine receptors, increasing lactate production, reducing sympathetic activity, or enhancing creatine uptake. And this one is the famous adenosine receptor blockade. It really reduces your perceived effort and fatigue while increasing your alertness and even motor unit recruitment. It is really fascinating when you go down the rabbit hole of what caffeine can do for you. You just got to be careful and not take too much of it. And also, timing it in the morning is kind of interesting, not right when you wake up in that 1 minute, but giving your body a little bit of time to adjust really seems to do wonders. All right, I'll see you in the next video.